Hey guys, I'm Justin with Legato Financial Group. Our firm is passionate about helping educate consumers, which is why we're powering the Gaining Interest podcast. The podcast of quick conversations with industry experts on topics that you want to know about, from sports to dining to healthcare and automotive, and really everything in between. It's hosted by one of the greatest local personalities that I've met, that's John Ramsey.
I'll tell you why I love this podcast, because it's all about community. We used to call it water cooler talk, and that no longer exists. But if it's interesting to you, it's interesting to us. We encourage you to tell your friends. As Justin mentioned, we're going to talk about everything under the sun. We will be gaining interest, and we appreciate you watching. Hello and welcome once again to Gaining Interest. It is a podcast that is all about things that interest you, will educate you, will broaden your horizons about things that are interesting, and certainly my next guest is. With me now is Barbara Lynn Jamison. She is the CEO and General Director of the Kentucky Opera. She joins us now, and there's nothing more interesting to me and intriguing to learn about opera, and I mean this. This is going to be interesting. Welcome to the show, Barbara.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
I am so glad you're here. You know, I was looking at your resume. It's really impressive because one of the first things I think of when I think opera is I think Metropolitan Opera. Mm-hmm. And you have a background that includes that.
I do.
So tell us a little bit about that and maybe a little bit more extensive conversation about your background, your resume.
Yeah, well, I started off as a singer. And just
you know, I'm going to test that a little later.
Well, no, I started off as a singer. So I love to sing, and I didn't know that I'd never been to an opera. My family did not attend operas when I was growing up. And so I didn't really think about being in the opera, but my career just found me there. Sometimes I say just looking at one step in front of the other, and it's ended me here. But Metropolitan Opera was part of that, the Guild's there. And then I've also been at Seattle Opera out west, so coast to coast. And about 5.5 years ago, landed myself here in Kentucky.
I hope you like it. You like Kentucky?
Love Kentucky.
I love hearing that. I love hearing that.
We love it.
I think it's interesting that you said I began as a singer, because I would think that background would really be beneficial to you. Obviously, you have a business acumen that would go with your title, but to know and understand the artistry that's involved. Mm-hmm. This isn't your normal everyday accountant kind of work. Mm-hmm. This is, you have to understand talent, you have to understand new projects, how you sustain the opera, all of these things. So tell me a little bit about that unique mixture that you have. Who discovered, okay, she can sing, she's talented, but she's also got some smarts to her as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, and it's a little bit specific to opera. But I sometimes tell people I learned to read staff paper, I learned to read music paper, and now I'm reading Excel spreadsheets. So it's all lines and numbers and codes, but it does tend to translate. And I do think that because I'm a general director and CEO, in opera, that tends to be the mix. In some other companies, you might have a CEO and the artistic director, but I am the artistic director as well as being the CEO. So it both is really important, and then learning the business, learning that I've been able to be part of a lot of leadership programs, and really was very fortunate to have a lot of great mentors along the way, teaching that business side.
Yeah, and fostering young talent, recognizing young talent and letting them exercise their creativity is something you've done. So that relatability, I would think, has to pay dividends. Right?
I think it does. I think it's really. I think that's an interesting observation that you make, because I do find that mentoring. There are a lot of artists who want to move into the administrative side of artistic companies. You see this in ballet, orchestra, opera, theater. That's not uncommon, but there is that mentorship piece of that is really crucial, I think, to making that transition. And so, like mentoring young singers and seeing potential talent, I look for that on the administrative side as well.
Interesting. We talked to Bob Bernhardt, who's a conductor, a Louisville Orchestra, and there's so many misconceptions about orchestras and what they're trying to accomplish now. It has really evolved. Opera has as well. I think there's a stereotype of, being very, to me, privileged, a little bit condescending and snooty. And so tell us, if you would please, push back on some of those mistruths.
I think, this is the historic reality. I think that we need to accept as performing arts companies that was the history. I think it's important we don't try to deny that.
Yeah,
that is exactly what it was. Particularly when it came over to the United States from the European continent, we were trying to keep that true, keep that precious, but I see our art form as really becoming American through this last century. And America is about equality. America is about reaching everybody and about that classism being taken away. That's what our entire country was founded on. So I think that it's just taken us a while to reinvent the art form into being an American art form on this side of the ocean.
I like the way you articulated that, and it's inclusiveness is important to you. So how do you make opera available and attractive to everyone? That sounds to me like a pretty broad and a big job. Right?
It is, and there are a lot of different barriers that have existed over time. I think the one that people think of most often is the price. I try to translate it into value. Price versus value are very different things. You might pay a lot more money to go see Sting or Paul Simon or U2 in concert, on tour. You'll see, or Taylor Swift, for instance. You'll pay a lot more to see that because you value that. Our tickets are much less expensive. They start at around $25 or $30
An American
for a show.
thing again.
Yeah, an American thing again, yeah. But operas and a lot of ballets and orchestras, we start at around $25 or $30. It's not expensive. But learning to value your time and your experience there. So price is one. I think another piece of that is seeing yourself on the stage. Are these people representative of me and my life? Do I see women singers? Do I see men singers? Do I see, if I identify as Black or Asian or Latinx, do I see that on the stage? Do I see that as a pathway I can follow? And so we really try to, we were very careful about making sure that our casts are representative of our community and that young folks and folks who've been on the earth for a while can see themselves in those characters as well.
Again, a lot like America, a melting pot of people who just happen to be able to sing very well, right?
Okay. Yes, exactly.
They have to have that.
Right. Exactly right. And then the stories that we tell, are the stories that we tell ancient and European, or are they also American stories? And if you look at musical theater versus opera, those tend to be American stories. Musical theater and opera in my book don't have very much of a difference. So, but we do have a lot of American opera really emerging, especially in the last 50 years, that tell American stories, that tell Appalachian stories, that tell stories of the Wild West. So we do have stories that tell those that are opera. So I think all of these things together start to make it seem more accessible, American, local. And we, as a Kentucky company, love to make those little twists to make our stage even feel Kentuckian. We look for things that help us see ourselves as Kentuckians on the stage, not just Americans.
I think the theme of our conversation so far seems to be like relatability and making it accessible and, like you said, diverse and all of these things that I think we all value. Mm-hmm. So for someone out there who's maybe never experienced the opera and they say, okay, so what am I going to feel? Why should I be attracted to it? What is your elevator speech to those folks? Because I do think there's a lot of people who are intrigued.
Yeah. I actually like to think about the experience, and I'm glad you said that word. I think that's really important because we do value experiences in our culture. I don't like every book that I read, but I like the experience of opening a book and smelling it. I don't like every movie that I go see, but I like the experience of sitting in that seat, having my popcorn, leaning back and seeing a show. And I might walk out of there less impressed with one or the other. Opera is the same way. Not every opera is the same. But the experience is something we often misinterpret. It goes back to that elitism. Am I going to feel comfortable there? Am I going to feel like I'm dressed well enough? Am I going to feel like I know what to say and what to do? Are the social mores going to be familiar enough to me? And that's what we work really hard at Kentucky Opera doing, is not making it fancy. And you can feel fancy. Sure, come in your fanciest fancy. That's great. But we also want people to feel like they can sit back, enjoy a show, and recognize that we are doing this in community with each other, that we're breathing together, we're laughing and crying together, and creating empathy among a community by doing all of these things together in the same space.
Yeah, there are endless studies about the benefits of music, singing, opera. So we don't need to go into that, but with that being said, I think the impact on the community is sometimes downplayed because as far as education, as far as open minds of children and adults alike. I mean, talk about the importance of impacting a community, and how do you do that, Barbara?
Well, I think opera is often misunderstood. Data would say that 100% of the people, if you ask them on the streets today, would be able to describe to you the experience of going to the opera and what they would see and how they would feel. But only 2% have been. So we have a preconceived notion of what that's going to be. So I think walking in and making it feel accessible and making it feel important has to do with helping people understand that this is for us. This does make our community stronger. I think another thing about that experience is that people often think of opera as just music and don't realize that it's fully staged. There are costumes, there's a set, there are lighting designers, and we tell stories just like the theater or a movie. And so I believe that those stories bring us together in a way that help us identify, just like a good book. You get to see another character's point of view and explore that and create empathy for a person who might develop or have some of those characteristics. So I think in exploring stories together in community, we learn to empathize differently with those characters, and we try to produce operas that really put that at the forefront. The characters are at the forefront of our opera, more than just standing there and singing. It's not a concert. It is a theater experience.
Speaking of standing there and singing, I think a lot of people, when they think about opera, they think about our tenors. They think about a Pavarotti or a Bocelli or something. Their popularity probably, though, has been a very positive, I would think, on impacting opera. I went to see Bocelli and it was sold out. Tickets were very expensive, but it was worth the experience. And maybe you get a little bit of a taste of opera, or do you get, it wouldn't be theatrical opera, but you get a little bit of taste of, I guess, the enjoyment of someone who is enormously talented.
You do. He is enormously talented and had other singers and dancers there that were also talented. So I think you get the in a Bocelli concert, for instance, you get that idea that the multidisciplinary nature of opera. Beautiful. There were beautiful videography going on. So there was a lot of great stuff. I think what you miss when you go to a Bocelli concert versus the opera, though, is that full line through story, that narrative. You get to hear the beautiful voice, you get to see something exquisite on the stage, but that storytelling is the piece that we really add to the mix. I think it's similar. I would liken it, and it would maybe be more like seeing somebody stand up and speak a Shakespeare soliloquy. Do you get the idea of King Lear from just watching the soliloquy?
Yeah. You need to see the story. You need to see it play out.
It sounds beautiful. It's beautiful poetry. It's well performed in street clothes, but it's not in costume. You don't know where that fits into the story. It's actually the same thing. Yeah.
And Kentucky Opera is a production company, though, so that's where that comes in. You have more than, it's much more than the singing. I mean, you've got sets, costumes. So tell me a little bit about that and how involved it is.
Yeah, I think people don't really realize that operas that we have on our stage don't travel the United States. They didn't come out of Broadway, and they're not on tour through the country. We're building them. We are casting them. We rehearse them for a month or more here. We build them. Sometimes we even commission new operas that have never been performed anywhere. We're getting ready to put some new commissions up soon in the coming years. So we're a producing company that produces with Kentuckians in mind, knowing it's not going to tour. And it hasn't been touring. It's for here and now. It sometimes feels like putting a lot of money and effort and love into building a sand castle that then appears for the community for a week or two, and then it's gone. So it's a really special opportunity, and every performance is unique because of that. It's not run on a click track. Everything is, and we work with the Louisville Orchestra and a lot of local musicians and dancers.
You're creating art.
We are creating the art, we are producing the art and performing the art here in Kentucky, and then it's gone.
So how do you, this is interesting, so how do you attract the talent? Is it, there's a local base, there's a national base, and also to be able to foster their creativity and to nurture that.
Right.
So this is a tough mix for you. I'm sure you have a very qualified and talented team, but how do you do this?
Yeah, it's really hard. On one hand, it's a big, vast world. On the other hand, it's a small world. So we kind of mix the two. We have a commitment to helping emerging artists. The Brown Theater, where we perform, and the Opera Center, where we perform, are two great places for young emerging artists to try out their new roles before they go sing at the Met, before they sing at the Lyric Opera of Chicago. So we have a lot of emerging artists trying out new roles here. We attract that. We have, and then we go to New York and we'll sometimes bring other folks in. We also have a lot of great Kentucky talent that we rely on. The most recent opera we did, everyone was from Kentucky.
Oh, cool.
It was just a great mix of local talent. And they have also performed on stages throughout the entire world, but they're from Kentucky. So we have a wealth of talent here in our own state as well.
So we've talked a lot about talent. Let's talk about your talent, Barbara Lynn Jamison. Let's talk about that. So singing, obviously I think some of that, and maybe you disagree with me, is you're born with this talent, but it does have to be nurtured and it has to be cultivated and taught, and I guess to a higher level. So talk a little bit about that process. For an opera singer, it's not like a James Taylor who says, okay, I can write some songs and I'm just going to sing them my style. There is a right and wrong way to do it, correct? No?
Yes and no. I think the thing about artistry is you always want to make something your own, right? Within certain parameters, whatever those parameters are. And I think the world puts you in those parameters. I mean, James Taylor might be on a certain list, right? Folk, or they've put him in a box, whether he intended that or not. Beautiful singing, I think, is beautiful singing, and just like dancing, you might specialize in jazz or tap, but you probably took ballet, and there's this crossover. I think.
When did you find out? You said, oh, someone listened, and they said, okay, she can sing.
I'll tell you a secret. It won't be a secret after today. I used to listen to Lawrence Welk on Saturday night at my grandmother's house, and the whole week long, I stood out on the sidewalk on my busy street in front of my home, and I sang all of those songs at the top of my lungs in like a 5-year-old voice. So all the neighbors got to hear me. I practiced on the sidewalk. So I've been singing my whole life. I've always loved it. I just enjoyed it. I played piano and
But
cello,
you were so good, neighbors were moving in. You brought up the value of the
yeah,
house.
I don't know about that, but I just love to sing and belt it out. And then I just kept singing because I loved it so much.
So a big part of it is the love for it, but then there's the tough part, because with the talent that you had, obviously it was recognized, and then there's the schooling part and the experts and tell me about that process. What was that like? Where did you go? How do you train a voice?
I think it's important to realize that we all have some creative germ inside of us, a little germ of creativity that we need to remember to explore. Sometimes I think that's pressured out of us over time when we are faced with other things we need to do, or family expectations or the world's expectations. I was very fortunate to have a family that nurtured my love of music. And I know others have the same with painting or sculpting or playing the guitar. And I think when you find opportunities, and I think that as an opera company, it's incumbent upon us to help young people find their opportunities and to give them a chance to explore that they might not know exists in any other format, but they have a place to try it. And for some people, they'll choose that as a vocation. For some people, that will be their hobby throughout their entire life. For some people, they will start to hone that craft and hone that skill into something that's competitive, as I did, and as the singers on our stage do. For some, they will continue to do that in a way that just fulfills them throughout their lives on the weekends and in the evenings with others. So yes, I studied, I worked hard. It is not easy. It's like a gymnast. Just because you can do backflips in the yard doesn't make you an Olympian, right?
Good point. That's a good analogy.
It's a lot of work you have to put into it. But that doesn't mean you should ever stop doing flips until your body says no. But I think that's really important.
So for someone who's watching now and they have a young Barbara, parents watching, and they're saying, I'm watching Gaining Interest. I learned a little bit about opera. I'm pretty excited about this. I have a young talent, a young Barbara. How would you recommend someone from Kentucky navigate an opera career?
Well, I'm going to do a shameless plug here
No,
for a minute.
please do.
We
Please
do
do.
have a youth opera project.
Good. There you
Kids
go.
from ages 8 to 18 get to join in. No experience. You don't have to be good. You just have to love it. Because there is something to be said about training and work. If you have an affinity for something, it's worth trying for. So ages 8 to 18 in the Youth Opera Project, they're actually doing their own opera. called The Hobbit in June. In June, they'll be getting ready for that. We have a little camp that will start for that, so you can check that out if the kids want to do The Hobbit. But other than that, just bring them. Not every opera, as I said, is kid friendly. Just like I said, with just every movie is not kid friendly. But we do try to help people understand when's an appropriate chance to come see the opera, and a lot of opportunities. So just let us know if you have a young folk in your family who would like to try that. And we would definitely help you find those ways. There are great school programs. Join the choir in your school, right? Join the theater program in your school. And you'll find your way.
Well, 99.9% of us and folks watching here do not have your talent, but they want to enjoy the opera. So tell us about some upcoming productions. How can they see you? You mentioned the Brown Theater. What's coming up?
Yeah, this February it is February. We are getting ready to do Pirates of Penzance, something fun. If you've never been to an opera, this is actually a really good one to start off with. It feels very musical-like. It's in English. It's funny, and it's a little bit silly. So Pirates of Penzance is a great way to start. We'll do As One back at the Brown we'll do As One in the Opera Center. It's a new production place for us in our new home. And then very soon we will be announcing our next season. And again, if you have kids and just want to come see The Hobbit, maybe your kids don't know if they want to be in The Hobbit, but they want to come see it. That will be open to the public.
Barbara, we talked a little bit about stereotypes and people's misconceptions about opera. There's one that I don't think it's a misconception, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you don't understand Italian, can you still enjoy opera?
Oh, well, first of all, not all operas are in Italian.
Okay.
So we have one coming up very soon that's in English, so it'll be easy. But even if they're in English, you can still see the captions above the stage. But if it's in Italian, French, German, Russian, we still keep those captions above the stage so you can
you'll
follow
feel
along.
it. You feel the emotions. I found that I have attended an Italian opera, and I just go, you can tell the expression, the acting, the sets, the movement.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yeah, sometimes I don't even want to look at those. I just want to feel the stage. But sometimes I get confused about what's going on and I look up there. So you have that option to have them above the stage or on a screen so you can see them. But it's up to you. That's the beautiful thing about opera is how you experience it is really your call. But those captions are there to guide you along the way. And we'll always offer a synopsis in the program. So if you just want to get the gist of it and follow along in your spirit, you can do that too.
You're not going to sing for me, are you?
No, not today. Me.
We've had I've really enjoyed this conversation. A lot of it has been about creativity and the production side of it. Let's talk about sustainability of the Kentucky Opera. That's a big part of your job as well. So talk about maybe some of the partnerships you have, how you keep people engaged, the community as well as businesses. How does that work, Barbara?
I think when we talk about sustainability, I think the most important thing to know about Kentucky Opera and a lot of our performing arts companies is we are nonprofits. That a lot of folks think of us as for-profits and that ticket sales cover the cost of our work. In all of these work and all of these companies throughout the country, ticket sales do not cover the cost of a single show, even if we sold out at top-notch tickets. It is a community service that we provide, and we believe it's important for a flourishing, thriving community to have these art forms that we all get to enjoy here in our state and in our city. So donations are an important part of that. Tickets are an important part, but we want everybody to participate. As I said, it's a community service. So we provide tickets at what you can pay. Just pay what you can. We provide tickets. If you want to come to anything, we will not turn you away for inability to pay. So sustainability, that's an important part of that. We need to matter. And that's one way that we choose to matter. When our values align with our community's values, we believe that they'll value us. And that happens through donations and support. We keep busy. We try to make sure that everything we do is valuable to the community in return, and not just self-serving as an opera company, but community service as we move forward.
Barbara, I've always felt that we have a very vibrant arts community here, but you've traveled around the country, and we mentioned Seattle, New York City, of course, being the creme de la creme. But with that being said, how do we compare to a medium-sized market or other states, the state of Kentucky, when it comes to opera?
Oh, I think we're proud of what we have here in Louisville, and it's true to have a ballet and an orchestra, a rep theater, an opera company, a children's theater. Having all of these things is extraordinary for a market our size. I think it's important that businesses know how important it is for the business community to help continue to support that. It's a great draw for people coming in from around the world to see Louisville in a positive light. People end up moving here as a result of having worked here. It's an important part of our economic vibrancy. And I think sometimes we feel a possible divide between the corporate community and the nonprofit community, especially when we start to tighten our purse strings and tighten our shoelaces and realize times are tough. But the more we hold together and keep supporting each other, I think it's our way out, and it's what makes us wonderful here in Louisville and so strong and vibrant.
Yeah, and to keep the future bright, it's obviously engaging young people, and it's more than just being a talented singer. There's other sides of this that people can get involved in, children can get involved with,
right,
with the Kentucky Opera. Talk about, costume design and production and, stage work. Tell me a little bit about some of the opportunities.
Yeah, I often will say that if you don't like singing, there's always an inroad for opera because opera incorporates the visual arts. Some people don't love the music, possibly, but they love to look at all this amazing scenery. How does that drop in from there? Where did that fly in from? All of these things happen behind the stage. The technical theater, we have a great stage crew here. We call it the IATSE crew. The stage crew in town is amazing. They love the art form. They lean in. So there are electricians, there are carpenters, there are flymen, there are all of these other art forms and creative paths. There's the costumes that we build in our costume shop that you can just look at how they flow on the stage, and sometimes that's enjoyable. We've got the pit full of beautiful musicians. We've got things happening backstage, wig and makeup artists, building wigs from scratch, building hats from scratch. So all of these amazing things, even covered buttons sometimes. You have somebody covering buttons or crocheting a scarf for a show. There's so much that goes into it. And I think when you sit back and look at it from the audience's seat, there's so many different ways to look at that in a way that going to a movie, you're only seeing what the director has chosen to show you in the screen. But in a stage, you can be taken by something off stage right that nobody else is seeing right now, but you're seeing your own little show happen in the corner, and it's very unique to you. So you can have a unique experience still while having that corporate experience. It's very fascinating to me.
I have to ask you, okay, Metropolitan Opera, you experienced it. What was your most magical moment? I'm just curious because there's so many global events that happen with Metropolitan Opera. When you were working there, what was one of your best memories?
When I was working there, one of my best memories, I don't know, there were so many. It was quite an extraordinary set. It's a huge stage. The talent that comes in there is magnificent. The orchestra is one of the best in the world. I would say, though, my experience was watching people. I always loved how people just enjoyed being there so much. And often people that you wouldn't expect to be at the opera showed up at the Metropolitan Opera because while you think of it as so grand and wonderful, it in its own way is still just a dichotomy of New York City and the world, just people coming in to experience beautiful theater together. And thinking that one time I took my 8-year-old thinking, she won't last through the whole thing. It was Hansel and Gretel, and I thought, I'll take her to the first act and I'll leave at intermission. Ready to go. It was late, school night. She said, Mama, I want to stay. I want to see the whole thing. I said, you really do? She said, I really do. So I think sometimes when we introduce people to the opera, I think sometimes we're a little afraid to commit fully, and because we, even as parents, even as somebody in that industry, I was a little afraid of, will it be okay, and will they like it, will she like it? And I think we often couch it negatively, whether we mean to or not. So if you love it, be enthusiastic and love it with us, and we love it enthusiastically and shamelessly. So I hope you can come join us.
Your passion and affinity, you exude it. I love it. I love it. So for folks who are watching Gaining Interest, powered by Legato Financial Group, we thank them very much. And they want to get more involved with the opera. Where do they go? Is it website, social media?
Yeah.
How do they get engaged?
Well, we're on all the social media, so check us out. And kyopera.org is our web address, where we'll also take you to our social media with links if you need to find us there.
Do opera people do this? Is that
sure, we do that. You know what we say? Before you go on, we say toy, toy, toy. We don't say break a leg.
What's toy, toy, toy?
Toy, toy, toy. It's an ancient saying, or we'll say toy, toy, toy. That just means good luck.
Okay.
Good luck on the stage.
Toy to you.
Toy,
But
toy.
I don't think you're going to need it. I think you've got all the skills. She's Barbara Lynn Jamison. And once again, she is the General Director and CEO of the Kentucky Opera. We thank you for watching once again. We hope you found it as interesting as I did. Once again, gaining interest. We'll see you next time.